From Wall Street to Main Street to help small business owners have the same capital as corporate America and give them the same resources as a larger company. We cover business funding, business credit, scaling, business consulting, and much more. Check out the website at shieldadvisorygroup.com. Welcome to the show, The Liquid Lunch Project.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan alongside my partner literally today. We're in the studio for the first time recording the podcast together. We usually only do it through Zoom. Luigi, the professor, Rosa Bianca. What's on tap today, Lou?
Matt, you know you're a lot taller in person.
You know, I get that a lot.
And a little bit more handsome, but I don't want to go down that road. Matt, today we're going to take a flashback. We're going to go back in time. Do you remember, and I know we're old enough to remember this, do you remember that nonsense of Y2K?
Never heard of it before.
Yep, I just dated myself. Wait till you hear the 80s references. So for those of you that are Generation Zers, Y2K was this apocalyptic prediction when the clock turned from 1999 to 2000. Now, the fear was that everyone's PCs would crash, everyone's servers would crash. I mean, we were prehistoric back then. It was only 23 years ago, but we've advanced a lot. And who would come to the rescue? From deep down in South Africa, Orrin Klopper would set up Netsurit because he felt that IT companies just weren't getting the job done. So he set up an IT company to create technology for small businesses to solve those problems. So welcome to the podcast, Orrin. Tell us, Netsurit, how did this come about in the throes of Y2K?
Yeah, thanks, Luigi. We were, I was at university, and we were doing pretty much everything that we could in the IT industry, selling computers and engineering calculators and providing services, and we just saw this entrepreneurial part of the economy that could be so enabled and empowered by technology. And there were not any really professionally run, focused IT services businesses that were delivering an honest and ethical and predictable service into that space. So that's really where it started. There was this sense of purpose right there that felt meaningful. And there was this huge part of the market that just felt like it was not addressed. And that's how we established ourselves in the early days.
How did you were you always into computers and IT and technology? How did you come about? Tell me the background story. Give me the origin story of Orrin.
No, sure. So I took an extra major in my second year of university because you could do that for free at the university I was at if you were getting good grades. And a great friend of mine had already started the business with his brother. And at that time, I was doing anything to make money. I was selling shoes and clothing at construction sites, at the restaurants I used to work at. I was doing all sorts of things. He saw I could sell. So he invited me to come and sell for him. So to be honest, Matthew, I wasn't technically that strong. I did do information systems. I did programming. I did pretty well, but I wasn't gifted at it. I gravitated towards the sales and the strategy quite soon. So that was in 95. In 97, I said I would do this full time. And I've been doing this full time since 1997.
Orrin, for those in the audience that really aren't familiar what technology was like in the 90s, kind of give us a snapshot of how much things have changed in these 2.5 decades since then.
Many organizations were not even networked. So you just had individual computers. And if they were networked and there was a server, it was all on premise, everything. There was virtually nothing in the cloud. And the way the finance department would prevent a cyber attack is they just wouldn't have the computer on the network. So nobody, it's like, to this day, if that's how you ran your finances, it would be the most secure you could ever imagine, So, and things just started to evolve. So initially there were a lot of peer-to-peer networks in the small and medium business space, entrepreneurial space. And then they started to have proper client server environments. We actually had a server with a domain controller, proper security and passwords and logins. And then the next shift was obviously to the cloud. So it's evolved hugely since then, but similar challenges, similar, like even if you look back in those in the late 90s, early 2000s, one of the major challenges with kind of our ideal customer profile is sort of organizations of 25 to 1,000 user environments. And one of the major challenges is you want those users to know how to make the most of the technology that they have before them. And even if you look now at cyber security and the cyber threats and cyber breaches, almost 90% of them come from a user doing something they potentially shouldn't be doing. And those similar types of gaps in knowledge and adoption of the right technology and understanding how to use it have existed over that entire time.
So walk us through what small business owners shouldn't do. I'm not talking about opening up a PDF from the Nigerian prince, but what sort of protocols can you help small business owners put in place to protect their IT infrastructure?
So, I mean, there's some super simple ones. So we focus really on organizations that are using the Microsoft technology suite primarily. So assuming you're using Office 365, the one simple thing to do from a security perspective, which at times feels onerous or like you're going to make the lives of your people difficult, but it's multi-factor authentication. So if you just enable that and you leverage a tool like Microsoft Authenticator, and you can almost have a password-less experience of logging in and managing the security of your users. So that's one thing. Enable multi-factor authentication and something like Microsoft Authenticator. So that app can sit on your phone, and it's really just an easy way to control security. Number two, I would go for a tool set, something like KnowBe4. So basically what KnowBe4 will do is they've made some really cool, simple user training programs, whether it's videos and interactions that you can do to just alert you to the types of ways that people can get into your organization. So typical one, Luigi, you get an email from Matthew saying, listen, this key supplier of ours, we're 60 days late on the payment. They've somehow found out that's true. We need to pay them urgently, and this is the details. It's not actually Matthew emailing you, but it looks like it. And somehow they've managed to fool you that it is him, and that happens. That's happened to one of our clients before. So that's the other thing. So
I get it now, a tequila distributor every month.
No, so those are two really simple things. And then I think there's another great one which just aggregates everything, and it's the Microsoft Security Score. So if you're using Office 365 and you've set up your environment in a relatively integrated way, and you've got a service provider that's doing a relatively good job, you can actually see the Microsoft Security Score, which will benchmark your security level against other organizations in your industry of a similar size. So it just gives you a sense of, so those would kind of be three high level tips that I would give. And look, the security is the hygiene piece. You have to get that right. But the real magic happens as you move up the stack. Because when you look at organizations that have got the likes of Office 365 and the Microsoft Technology Suite, which is Microsoft Power Platform, what you find is there are a myriad of automation opportunities, productivity opportunities, and adoption opportunities that can literally triple the return on what they have already spent on their technology environment.
Orrin, with this the new reality is everyone is working remotely. I mean, we have a very small firm, but we've got team members all over the country. I would imagine that would increase the risks to your IT infrastructure when you have so many remote people logging in from so many diverse places. How do you protect that?
Yeah, most definitely. It has increased the risk. So as the pandemic broke and most of our customers went into a fully remote working way of interacting and getting work done, that was one of the first things. Well, we enabled the remote work, and the very next thing was to ensure the security, because a lot of the security was geared around being in an office environment. But fortunately, there were quite a few organizations that already leveraged some of the remote working ability, but it wasn't as pervasive as it is now. So there are a whole lot of tools that you can use just to ensure that and really maximize that security. It's not too difficult. Provided that there is some level of standardization in the way the technology is adopted, the way files are stored, the way files are shared, and sort of an overall view of security within the organization.
Orrin, let's have a fun case study. Let's imagine the three of us were starting up a new company. And this conversation happens across America, North America, even South Africa on a daily basis. What would be the first couple of protocols that you would have us put in place for a new company so that as you build and scale, you're respecting that standardization?
Hypothetically, I were advising a business like that in those early days, I would standardize on the productivity suite that you choose. So I would say, okay, fine, we're all either going to use G Suite or we're all either going to use Microsoft. So that's the first thing I would do. I would say standardize. So that would be the first thing. And I would choose, you get different SKUs of licensing. I would choose the SKU that allows for some of the integrated security features right up front so that you get used to that from day one. The second thing I would do is right up front, I would invest in some depending on the level of computer literacy and the experience those users have had with using say for instance, the Microsoft technology suite, I would invest in some training. And typically what that starts with is a pre-assessment where you can actually understand, okay, where is my level at? And what does it need to be so that you can close that gap if there's someone that possibly is not as digitally savvy as someone else in the team. That would definitely be one of them. And then I would actively from day one have a way of saying, what is a process that is unbelievably manual that we think could be automated? And with the way Microsoft technology has empowered you, even as a user, you can automate a whole lot of things, leveraging some simple tools, some rules, even rules in your Outlook and how you receive your email can just have a massive, massive impact on your productivity. Those would probably be three things that I would kind of put out there to start. I would also standardize potentially on hardware if you can. It's not as big and as important, but it does make life easier as you grow because you've got a set machine, you've got a set SKU, how it's set up, how it's configured. And we've seen with fast growth companies, from the time they want to hire to the time the person is appointed to the time they actually need to be productive has concatenated massively. And we need to be very, very slick in how quickly you enable that.
Orrin, what do you do with a team member, let's say someone such as myself that went to IT school at Atari 2600 University? So, how do you deal with someone like me that's a little bit antiquated in his use of technology? I mean, do you just kind of force it down his throat? You
can try.
How do you play that game?
You can try. I mean, there's in every single one, probably not every, but many of our customers, we will have some very senior leader or key person, like some of the law firms, even with the older partners, the assistant comes and prints out the email and puts it on his desk, and they're a powerhouse, right? They're probably billing more than anybody else,
We work around it.
Yeah. We can't force it. We try to encourage it. We try to illustrate the benefits. This offering we've built on the productivity side is called Innovate. And what we do is we actually say for $5,000 a month, just the example figure of managed services Innovate agreement, we will find $60,000 worth of ROI, or we continue working until we do. And we hope that all those examples of where real value has been seen would drive the leadership, because it comes from the leadership team. If the leadership team are adopting it and saying, look, don't email me an attachment, put it in Teams, then it just trickles through to the rest of the organization. So we try and illustrate that value as soon as possible.
Orrin, you were telling me that the company is growing faster than ever before. Do you relate that to the environment that we're in right now and everybody working from home these days and the change?
No. I think if you look at the industry that I'm in, so in the US alone, there are about 30,000 companies like Netsurit. Okay. It is the reddest ocean, the most competitive you could imagine. There's another company, another MSP around every corner. Okay. But every business needs it. So it is a big market. So to be able to find and win new customers is exponentially harder than it was 5 years ago, and exponentially again than it was 10 years ago. So when I look at what we're spending on marketing and we're achieving from an organic growth perspective, I feel proud of it, but I could double that, Matthew, and I would not see double the return. So there's diminishing returns on the organic growth. So what is happening in our industry? There's consolidation happening. Many of these owners are in their late 40s, mid 50s, even into their 60s. They're seeing the consolidation. They're seeing an opportunity to potentially exit at a favorable valuation, and they're seeing how competitive the market is. So about 60 PE firms have made a play for the MSP space, okay? And there are supposedly about just under 100 MSP platforms that are out there doing acquisitive growth. So our primary growth lever is acquisitive growth. This last year was a record organic growth year, but I think it was only 12%. When I look at the numbers compared to the years before, so we're a much bigger business. Our trailing 12-month revenue is about, I think it's $38 or $39 million. But when you look at the quantum, not the percentage, it was our best organic growth year ever, but it was only 12%. So what we're planning to do and what we are doing is, so over the last 24 months, we've done 3 acquisitions. We had 2 fall through last year that were, one was in LOI and one was just before LOI. We have 1 in LOI now, and we have some other opportunities that are quite close to LOI. So the primary growth lever that we are pulling, Matthew, and I'm focused on is acquisitive growth. And that's where I'm spending a lot of my time.
So I have a question here. At what point did you decide to grow through acquisitions? Because I'm a big believer in growing through acquisitions. As a matter of fact, we have a book coming out that we're telling people, instead of starting a business, go and buy one.
Subtle plug.
And then grow it from there. Because I believe you have historical data to make decisions upon, instead of just throwing money out the window and starting the business. Start with something that's already profitable.
I love that. So we've kind of done smaller acquisitions ad hoc through the history of the business, but it was never a decided and focused strategy. So maybe just to share a little bit of how we got there. 2019, one of the worst organic growth years ever. Our organic growth was in a hole. Now we're early 2020, and suddenly there's this flippant COVID thing. We didn't know we didn't know how bad it was going to get. And we faced 2001, 2002, and we faced 2008, 2009. And the one thing we do is we move very quickly and we're very decisive. So we saw this coming, organic growth in a hole, okay? And to be honest, in 2020, for the first time since 1997, our revenue shrank, which we've never had. Never, ever, ever. Even in the worst, it was marginal. It was like 3%, but still. And the major revenue loss actually came from two customers. One insourced all their IT and the other did a global outsource. So we lost those two customers. It had nothing to do with COVID. So anyway, we went in, we cut costs very, very aggressively across the business. We took 50% of those savings and put them back into cash flow and profits just to protect ourselves because we didn't know how bad it was going to get. And the other 50% we put back into growth and innovation. So we quadrupled over an 18-month period the amount of time we spend in marketing. And sorry, Luigi, I'll come to you now. And we decided then we're going to focus on acquisitive growth.
I like that.
Orrin, when you're assessing these acquisition partners, are you looking at geographic expansion? Are you looking at diversified service base? Like, how do you make a decision on what your next acquisition will be?
So our primary focus for acquisitions is MSPs that are anywhere between $3 to $9 million in revenue. So it's similar types of businesses. We're looking across the whole of the US. The deals we have done have primarily been on the East Coast, across New Jersey and New York. We're looking at organizations that do what we do, have good people and leaders, because we want our acquisitive growth model, Luigi, is we want the leaders, because we know the greatest constraint in fast growth is access to good leaders. And so we want the leaders. We know if the good leaders stay, the good people will stay. And then in turn, the good clients will stay. So that's really our sort of approach. We did buy a business at the end of 2021, Luigi, that was not that. That has formed the backbone of our innovate offering, which is based on automation and leveraging the Microsoft Power Platform stack.
So, Orrin, as you look at the history of Netsurit and you're trying to project forward, what's missing? What's the missing piece? What could you acquire in the near future to take Netsurit to 50, 60, 70?
So our goal this year is to acquire $3 million worth of EBITDA and to do that again the following year. It's crazy. You know, I look at if I go back 3 months, how much I had on my plate and how I focused on this, which has created some anxiety because letting go as an entrepreneur sometimes it has its own challenges. But I cannot believe what has happened to this pipeline.
Well,
and
I remember hearing this saying years ago, and it's stuck in my head. If you want something done, give it to a busy person to do, because he or she will find that time.
Yes, no, that's it. So I've let go of some big things, and I'm unbelievably focused on this. And there's an exciting sense of purpose here for me, Luigi, in a sense that I've traveled this road for my adult life. I'm essentially doing the same thing I was doing 20 years ago. There are so many other entrepreneurs like me that are looking at this market, 60 PE firms. It's overwhelming for them. What should they do? How should they navigate this? We're totally privately held. So I feel like we can really protect the legacy of so many MSPs and entrepreneurs that have traveled a similar journey to me. So it's unbelievably exciting, but it also feels deeply, deeply meaningful, because I think, go for it.
No, Orrin, this is where in the podcast, Matt and I lift the hood. So you mentioned earlier that you were a very good student, so you took on that second major, right? So that maybe leveraged you into this wonderful success. But that wasn't always the case. You weren't always a wonderful student. Let's see where that spark started, this entrepreneurial spark. Tell us a little bit about your childhood, because I know you probably had some struggles as a kid, as a student.
No, for sure. I was a difficult kid for any teacher. I went to quite a few schools. I only got expelled from 3. You know, so out of 9, that's like a 6 out of 9 that I didn't get expelled out of. So that's a pass rate, right?
If you were a baseball player, you'd be a millionaire.
Yeah. No, you know, I mean, I feel very blessed and grateful. The last school I went to, which is a school called King Edward's, just old school discipline. You still got whipped in those days. You know, if you misbehave, you go to the headmaster gives you jacks. You know, so it really helped. And I think it was in that time, Luigi, that I realized where I respected the teacher, I was a much better student. And where I didn't connect with or respect the teacher, that's where I got in the most trouble. And I started realizing early on, if I can, I should probably try and find my own path. And then, you know, going to so many different schools, I realized that my school uniform was still pretty fresh and I could sell that before I went to the new school and make a little bit of cash, you know. So those were some of the early things that snuck in those early days. You know, one of the benefits of going to so many schools. So, yeah, and I think I had my dad was an entrepreneur, and my mom was just this huge force of love and support, and you can do anything. And I was actually a mommy's boy. She spoiled me rotten, you know. So boarding school was good for me. I was at boarding school for my whole high school. But yeah, it kind of started at school, and then pretty much immediately, you know, when, you know, I mean, to just be totally honest with you, pornography was legalized in South Africa in 1994, okay? And there was this famous porn movie at the time by Janine Lindemulder. So anyway, I convinced my girlfriend at the time to buy a second VHS machine. She was rather well off. And she said, like, why are you doing that? Blah, blah, blah. So I said, no, we can copy the movies we like. So anyway, me and my friend Gareth, we duplicated the shit out of this movie, and I sold it at the restaurants that I worked at. I sold it wherever I could. So that was one of the ways we made money. We used to throw parties. I used to sell clothing and shoes. We did all sorts of things to make money in those early days. I mean, when I got my student loan to pay for my degree, they gave you the whole amount in the year in advance, and you only had to pay the fees in terms and cycles. So I would use that as cash flow and working capital for some of my business ideas. You know,
your offer sheets to these acquisition targets or from your deck, I would eliminate that Netsurit was inspired by a porn movie.
Look, this is the first podcast I've ever told that story. So maybe you want to edit that out. I don't want to offend your listeners, you know.
Oh no, trust me, they have thick skins. Orrin, we started.
Were you worried that I was going to say? Were you worried where that was going to go? Like I started in them.
Oh, I loved every minute of it. It's great.
I'm doing it right now.
So, hey, Orrin, I know you got a hard stop at 2 p.m. We started late. I'd love to have you back on if you want to come on so we can make up.
Oh, I'd love to. I've loved this chat with you
but
guys.
I really want to be respectful of your time. So I got one question for you before I let you run. And it's going to be, if you had to choose one piece of technology, what would it be?
Yeah, as a whole technology device, I would choose my iPhone.
Okay.
But probably the thing, interestingly, that I use the most on that phone is WhatsApp. I'm so connected to so many groups, so many customers, so many people through that platform. Yeah, that's for me.
Orrin, thank you so much for being here. Guys, we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the show. And make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of The Liquid Lunch Project.